that I love from many different parts of my life, some from the church, some from outside of it. What I want to talk to you today is about filling in the blanks. Now, filling in the blanks often means filling the blank in with the right answer. It's either right or wrong. 1 + 1 equals. Today's date is, whatever it is, the 15th. In the Scarlet Letter, the A that Hester Prynne wore stood for, Walter, you knew this. Adultery. I thought, did somebody say apple? No. Today we're talking about blanks that are not informational, that are not factual, the ones we fill in all the time, often without being aware of it, filling them in unconsciously. I am blank. A person who looks different from me is blank. Our church's future is blank. The words we fill them in direct our decisions, our actions, our moods, our relationships, and how our day and how our lives unfold. This kind of obvious thing came home to me some years ago when I was in Ohio. Some of you know a short movie, independent movie, was made of one of my plays, Nietzsche Ate Here, and I went to see the premiere in Ohio where the director lived. It was the first time I had seen it, and it was a little slow for me. So I was watching the audience, and afterwards with Q&A and stuff, I decided to find out in an indirect way if they were still watching it. There's a moment where the waitress looks out the window, realizes something, and then turns to confront the stranger in her diner. And so I asked the audience, at the moment she looks out the window, Cheryl realizes what? I wanted to see if they were listening. Well, they were. What came out of their mouths was amazing. One guy came up with a novel. This was a few seconds. He came up with a novel. Somebody else came up with this science fiction kind of thing. Someone else came up with something that was so interesting but not necessarily related to the script. And I thought, okay, they're watching, they're engaged, that's great. And then I thought, and they did what humans do when we don't know. We fill in the blanks, we create, we construct our own stories. Now again, it's not rocket science, but it was very powerful to me, and it had an impact. And I remember thinking how Unity has helped me be aware of how I fill in the blanks. Because as Seneca said centuries ago, Roy suffers more in imagination than in reality. We are built to fill in empty spaces. It's innate, it's what we do to make up what we don't know. There's nothing wrong with it. Movies, theater, what will happen, you know, we make up scenarios, and if we're wrong, so what? It's stimulating, it's fun, it's engaging. But in our daily lives, we usually live unaware that we filled in many blanks at some point in the past. We've embraced them, we've lived them, they've become our truth. He or she's not interested in me, so that means blank. I'm not attractive, I'm boring, I haven't lost enough weight, I've lost too much weight. That means that no one will ever be interested in me, ever. So now, what we've done is fill more than just fill in the blanks. We've probably created a story which we might tell ourselves over and over and over again, and that becomes truth. We forget to erase the old, and we fill in blanks with words that create new scripts, which is what we need to do. That's one of the things that Unity reminds us of, reminds me of week after week. I didn't get the job, so that means I'll never get a good job. I'm not smart enough. I'm a loser. I don't deserve to make that much money. Or she just doesn't like clever Jewish Buddhist men from New York who speak at Unity. It means this, not this. We fill the blanks in based on our past experiences while growing up, watching how others fill them in. How about God is? How we fill that in says more about us and how we've been conditioned by family, by culture, by religion, than about God. John Bell once was up here and he said, God created us in his own image and then we returned the favor. So the problem is that so often we fill in the blanks with messages of I am not good enough, not worthy enough, not deserving enough, with words that reinforce that I will never measure up, I will never be enough. Yet there are a million other possibilities which don't devalue or shame us, which don't put our whole being or esteem or sanity on the line for our entire lives. Now, back in elementary school, Parkway School, Long Island, in the 1900s, they didn't pick me for their sports teams because blank. I sucked. And it did mean that. I did suck. I filled in the blank right that time. Sometimes we might fill it in correctly. Doesn't mean we have to torture ourselves with it, obsess, cling to it, cling to my lack of skill, my mistake, my unkindness. Doesn't mean I have to keep on running that script in my head and apply it to life situations through the decades. Because I don't suck at everything. So we need to be aware of how we fill in the blanks. Because those words can start a script followed by pages and years of us devaluing, minimizing, shaming ourselves. When I'm in my head, I am behind enemy lines. Because when I'm in my head, I'm usually running an old script. And it's like I have the cannon pointed at me, and I'm the one lighting the fuse. The words become our story, we get wed to that story, we make it our identity, and we accept it as fact, not just some conditioned perception. Joel Goldsmith, in Break the Fetters That Bind You, tells us that everyone must learn to awaken in the morning, take hold of their own mind, and decide whether one is going to accept any or every thought that comes to them. Then he affirms, I do not permit my mind to be used by suggestion, by outside influences, by outside opinions or theories. I make my mind an instrument for the truth of God. I make my mind an instrument for the truth of God. Now, think about filling out today's blanks from that perspective. With love, compassion, respect flowing from you out to others. Instead of filling it with words of not deserving, of being damaged goods, of being less than, and then projecting that kind of pollution onto others. Emmett Fox reminds us that thinking of yourself as a worm and a child of a worm is the quickest way to demonstrate a wormy existence. Crawling about mentally can only be the prelude to crawling about spiritually, morally, and even physically. We keep the blanks filled in with thinking that has worked for us, or that's familiar to us, even if the thinking means a wormy existence. But we've forgotten that they were once blanks we filled in. Sometimes we fill them in decades ago. So they become cemented. They become our truth. Filling in the blanks gives us some illusion of control. I mean, come on, it's hard living life without knowing. And we really never know. So we fill in the blanks. Minds do that. There's nothing wrong with that. At the same time, Alan Cohn reminds us that what we fill them in with amplify the themes in our consciousness, and we increase the chances of a similar story, often non-productive, painful, repeating itself in our world. So of course, in my talking about this, I'm asking you to think. What themes do I amplify in my consciousness? How do they affect my daily life? My moods, my relationships, my church. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying is a song we sing here. It's one of the songs that hooked me into Unity in 1990. We need to carefully choose the thoughts which become the stories we tell ourselves and become the lives we lead. Because if we run on automatic pilot, or unaware, or decide not to reword a thought, not to choose again, we are, as someone said, tossed along in the stream of past conditioning and habit, battered by powerful currents, largely living at their command. You know, we often tend to feel responsible for what we do, but not for what we think. If we only had software updates that automatically revised our outdated thinking, like Google Spirit. Google Spirit will update your thoughts at midnight tonight. Yeah. Guess that wouldn't help me learn the lessons I needed to learn this time. Still, carrying the burden of the past is exhausting. James Hollis, a Jungian therapist, in Swamplands of the Soul, how's that for a title, says, if you're stuck, it's because beneath the surface of any issue is a set of filaments which invisibly lead back to an earlier place. How many people make decisions, take actions, base relationships, and live by those filaments that tie them to long ago? Speaking of long ago, Stephen Sondheim, who's one of my gods, in Into the Woods, has these lyrics that are so powerful to me and addresses this. And in the song, Children Will Listen, the lyrics at the end are, what do you leave to your child when you're dead? Only whatever you put in its head. Things that your mother and father had said, which were left to them too. Things that were left to them too. You see, friends, some of those blanks were already filled in for us when we were born. Perhaps things about God, about strangers, somebody of a different color, a different religion, about fear. And of course about the multiple benefits of worry. See, as a New York Jew, I had to learn that worrying is not an Olympic sport that I want to win. It's meditating on what I don't want. Amalia Frank. Seneca again was talking about me when he said, some things torment Roy more than they ought, some torment him before they ought, and some torment Roy when they ought not to torment him at all. But when we're mindful and aware and observe and witness our thoughts without judgment, Unity has helped me do that. Course in Miracles has helped me do that. Many of you have helped me do that. Without judgment, we can choose again. I need to remember to choose again all the time, so I can choose not to be tormented. As thou seest, so thou beest. Charles Philip. As thou seest, so thou beest. And don't we all want to beest more loving and joyful and at peace rather than tormented? Unity says we can be when we fill in blanks with words that are spirit-driven rather than ego-driven, with thoughts from our higher self than from our frightened child, that we're not slaves to the past no matter what happened to us. We're not slaves to the past, nor to the paths we have forged in our brain, literal pathways, furrows of fear, joy, anger, for me, deep furrows of anxiety from an early age. We can forge new paths. Neurologists, psychiatrists tell us that. We can choose to automatically go down the old, well-tread furrows in our brain which separate us from another and from spirit, or we can choose to continue building those furrows of love which connect us to each other. If we're tired of being unhappy, anxious, scared, we need to let go of the old ways of thinking and release the known world. But who are we without our history of sadness, of anger, of fears, which have become our teddy bears as we clutch them as if they offered safety? Jane West, many years ago, up here said, who are you without your story? I've never forgotten that. Charles Dubose tells us to sacrifice what we are for what we could become. even if we don't know what that means. I recently heard a story. It's not so recent anymore. I don't know if it's from Jan or from someone else. It was from somebody very steeped in recovery program. And there was a group of 12 steppers taking a boat ride to the island called Serenity. And as the boat pulled away from the dock, people noticed that Mary was running and she hadn't gotten on. And they just shouted to her, "Mary, you're a great swimmer. Jump in and swim." She had a bathing suit on. So she jumped in the water, she started to swim. She swam for quite a while and started to sink. And then her friends on board said, "Mary, come on, don't give up, drop the rock." She kept on swimming with encouragement. And then she started to go under, and she heard her friend say, "Mary, drop the rock, drop the rock." Well, she was vaguely aware of something around her neck, couldn't figure out what it was. She gathered her strength, she started swimming, she felt this heaviness, and then she heard them yell, "Don't be an idiot, drop the rock." She went down again. Then she realized this thing around her neck, this was why she kept sinking. The thing was her rock that they were all shouting about. Her rock was resentments, fears, dishonesty, self-pity, intolerance, and anger. Just some of the things that her rock was made of, okay? She untangled some of the strings, she pulled them off, she found more, she found the strings, she pulled them off. She was amazed at how easy it was to swim. She caught up with the boat, she was welcomed, and they celebrated without alcohol. Now, can we release the rock that we carry, or the rocks, or the boulders, or the pebbles of limitation, of fear, of anger, resentment, and hurt? Because if we don't, we'll probably continue to fill in the blanks in our lives in a way that leads us to narratives that cause us to suffer and drown over and over and over again. So take a moment. What thoughts are weighing you down? What's your heaviest rock? Your lightest one? Again, maybe it might be a pebble. You're welcome to drop the heaviest. Yes, absolutely, go for it. But if it's easier to drop the lightest, drop the lightest. Remember what someone said about forgiveness. If you're going to work on forgiving, you may not want to start with the Nazis. Spiritual progress, not perfection. We're co-creators with God, so I can choose to co-create in a way that's beneficial to me, from my Christ-like, from my Buddha nature, or co-create from a way that's more challenging, filled with fear, driven by ego, because that's what I did yesterday and the day before. And when I did it, I survived. It feels safer. But as Reverend Lafayette told us, our job is to walk away from the manger, to get off the cross and to arise from the tomb of limitation, to be the gods we're supposed to be. When you have a blank to fill in, do you script it with a crucifixion or a resurrection? Too often I've filled it in with a crucifixion, but I've gotten better. W.H. Auden says we would rather be ruined than changed. Similarly, Hollis says we would rather choose old dread rather than new angst, the comfort of the familiar. Have the ways you filled in the blanks emboldened you to live the way you want to live, or they just reinforced old dreads? Now, Charles Schulz of Peanuts fame put it in a less existential way. Life is like a 10-speed bike. Most of us have gears we never use. I've seen this as a mental health counselor. People don't always come to counseling to change, to use new gears. Oh no. They come because they want the hurt to stop. So they hope this counselor, this therapist, can make it stop hurting. Instead of, I'm ready to do something differently, to try a new behavior, a new gear. In Greek theater, there used to be something called Deus ex machina, God from the machine. An actor playing God would be lowered down from a machine or brought up from a trapdoor and save a seemingly hopeless situation. I mean, that's what gods do, you know? Take away pain, fix an unfixable situation when those gods were in the mood. And they would resolve the mortal's difficulties. Some people pray, God, please take away the pain, fix this, work your magic miracles. Instead of, God, fill it with your presence, fill me with your presence. I'm willing to change my mind about this situation, to fill in the blanks with new words and new behaviors. Spirit, help me see this as you see it. But it's our choice. We can choose to let go, to drop the rock, to fill in the blanks with words that treat us and each others with respect, as being precious and worthy, or to grasp the rocks and continue our narrative from yesterday, perhaps from generations ago. At times I fill in those blanks with damaging, ego-reinforcing beliefs from childhood. James Hollis tells us bluntly, it's one thing to have a scared kid within us, as we all do. It's something else to turn the conduct of our life over to that child. That resonates for me very much. At times, the SS Berkowitz is being steered by a 6-year-old. How is the person steering out at the helm of your ship? When I fill in the blanks in the perspective of my old worldview, when I'm not mindful of my narratives, how they help me to fly or to drown, they guide me into turbulent waters, all hands on deck. Bridges says, living with the old world view is a protective shell we outgrow, but accommodate to stay in for protection. Protection from that new angst? Perhaps. Protection that comes at great cost. So what do? Charles Phillip puts it very simply, for a healthy state of mind, let go of old thoughts, take on the new. For we find both heaven and hell within our own consciousness, both the result of our own thought. Arthur Green says, we need to remove the old and the false and replace it with the new and the true. Exchange one thing for another. It's your decision. Is it time to let your higher self steer your ship? To steer the ship of our church? If so, let go of the old thoughts, take on the new. And when they come back, let them go again. And when they come back, Amalia used to say, oh, Amalia, it's so hard. And she'd go, yes, dear. But it's hard thinking those thoughts too. I said, okay. Every new day, every new experience is a blank canvas with multiple blanks to fill in. In the 1920s, Unity writer Imelda Octavia Shanklin reminded us that the you of today begets the you of tomorrow. To improve the product, the you of today must transcend the you of yesterday. So when we walk out of here, let's try a new gear. Do or say or think something to improve the product of who you are at this very moment. And help our church transcend the community that we were yesterday. And then let's all sail onward. Blessings. Chair and floor support you. Allow yourself to be supported. And breathe. Breathe on purpose. Our thoughts are prayers. Thoughts will come. Welcome them and let them go. As if they were clouds in your mind simply floating by. that stillness, breathe in the affirmation. I make my mind an instrument for the truth of God. We remember Joel Goldsmith's words. I do not permit my mind to be used by suggestion, by outside influences, or by outside opinions or theories. I make my mind an instrument for the truth of God. We are receptive to guidance from that inner voice as we sit in the silence and repeat to ourselves, I make my mind an instrument for the truth of God. Mind an instrument for the truth of God. And so it is.